All right, we are live once again. Welcome back to Mexicali, and today's gonna be a good one. I got Adam here with me from Old School Aquatics.
Howdy,
Um,
everybody.
we were talking about he was trying to remember who was it that had recommended his channel to him, and I was telling him that what happened was I got a call from Aquafunk um, out of the blues. It was in the afternoon. He goes, dude. He goes, I got something for you. I just sent you a link, and I was like, okay. And I was looking at it. He goes, dude, you got to check this out. And he goes, I'm super excited about this kid. He goes, it's so good that he's either gonna take off or it's gonna go down in a ball of flaming glory, and I want to watch it either way. And he goes, but no, he goes, all seriousness, he goes, I think this kid is pretty interesting. His whole thing was that he goes, oh, hold on. Okay, there we go. I had to mute the YouTube side of it because I could hear it in my headphones. Um, he goes, no, he goes, what is pretty interesting is he goes, this kid really seems very confident and sure of what he's saying, like he's been doing this for a long time. And I told Funk, I said, well, we'll find out. I'll go check him out. Started watching some of your stuff right off the bat. You hit him up with, this is going to be something very different. We're going to, a lot of people talk about building fish rooms, and they kind of seem to skip a lot of steps. Funk's whole thing is, I want to see what's in the book. Tell him to show you the book. He goes, I've never seen anybody walking around with a book. He's always going to the book. And I go, well, he's just kind of jotting down his notes. He goes, yeah, but he's so young. How does he know so much? I go, I don't think this is his first rodeo. And I started watching some of your videos, and yeah, you've alluded to having other fish rooms, been doing this for a while. So, with that being said, there he is. Speaking of the devil, and why don't you give us a little bit about who you are and what it is you're doing, Adam?
Right on. Yeah, well, my name's Adam, Old School Aquatics, and I'm on a little bit of a different mission than I was for a long time. My business mission is I really want to change the supply chain here in the United States. So, obviously, audience, it's the internet, it's the whole world, but here in the United States, I want to change, for posterity, what the supply chain looks like. And that's a incredibly ambitious, it's $1 billion industry. There's an ton of capital that's already been spent to make it the way it is, and I don't think it benefits the end consumer. And that's sort of what this all will boil down to. We'll talk a lot about importing and where it came from and my experience with it, and how we'll compete with it and all this stuff. But to me, it all boils down to importing being not the most beneficial to the new hobbyist. And I call this out originally here. I don't think it's worth catering to the most experienced people, because the most experienced people in the room, which are probably a lot of us here that are fish nerds hopping onto a live stream, the most experienced people, we can make do. We know how the water chemistry works. We know what works in our water, and we've found kind of a pathway. But catering to people that don't have that experience, knowledge, understanding, getting them to have success will help everybody. You'll get more variety. We'll get more notoriety. We'll get new things in the hobby. It's a higher just total dollars being spent in the hobby. I think helping the industry help the new people is going to wind up helping everybody. And with that, I'm cool jumping in to this PowerPoint here. Are you able to share that screen?
Yeah, let me bring that up. Oh wait, you have it. Let me see. I can still bring it up though. Give me a second and I'll bring it up.
Yeah, thank you. So I put together a PowerPoint's probably giving it too much credit. I put together a series of pictures that I'll talk about here. I didn't have enough time to put together
slides.
Cool, yeah, slideshow, if you will. And it's just kind of explaining, some of what I used to do, and then what I'm doing now and where I'm going with it. And then at the end, I have some math for you guys on why I think it'll be scalable to do it here in the United States. I think that's a topic where I guess I disagree with some folks on. And yeah, then I'm happy to get into anything. I got the book right next to me, so ask away. And the W is kind of pronounced as a V, only if you're German, though. It's Weiss if you're German, and it's Weiss if you're not. So either goes.
All right, still trying to load up. Here we go. So now I got to get out of here.
Take it time for a
All
water
right.
break.
So, yeah. So let me share that. All right. Sorry. All right. Here we are.
Cool. Yeah. All right.
So let me get us off to the side so we're not interfering with the thing. All right. There we go.
Perfect. Right on. Okay. Well, I am driving the boat here. I like screwing around sometimes when we're taking thumbnail pictures. Let me make sure. Is it sharing your screen or is it sharing my screen?
I think it's sharing on my screen. Unless you bring it up on your end,
Oh,
it
here. Let me
won't.
try that again. Here.
Yeah. Like you did earlier where it was working.
Yeah.
So, what's the story behind the logo?
Well, the I was looking for all sorts of different names. I didn't know exactly what to call it. I didn't want to cater myself too deep in any direction, and I kind of thought about what I felt was missing, especially in the guppy side of the world. And I feel like the biggest part that's missing, I'll go back to it to kind of show that logo again here.
There you go. Now you've got control of it. There you go.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. I
Let
felt
me.
like in the guppy world, we've kind of changed what we sell. I guess the actual product, the actual fish, has morphed over time, and it's started to cater to be very beautiful, but to cater away from beginners. I mean, the guppy used to be a very beginner-friendly fish, and over, I mean, even just the time that I've been here, but hearing from all the old heads from what it came from in the '90s to what it is today, it has gone downhill a lot for the new people. And so, in breeding, specifically in breeding guppies, my goal is to breed back some of the just genetic hardiness that was used to be inherent to just what the fish used to be, and selecting for strains that have that still a beautiful fish naturally, but looking for more body size and healthy genetics more than the biggest fins in the world, I guess. And let me see here. Yeah, all right, so that's working. So, all right, the next slide here, and peep the Dr. Pepper on the import. This is a picture taken way too long ago, probably on my iPod from high school. Back in the day, I used to import, so primarily Neocaridina shrimp. I believe I was the first or one of the first people to sell Neocaridina shrimp on Amazon.com. And so back in high school, I started importing, and it was interesting. I thought it was really cool. Back then, it was playing with unreal amounts of money. I guess when you're a high schooler, even a couple grand is like huge money. And it was interesting. I learned a ton doing it. I brought in somewhere in the neighborhood of 8,000 shrimp about every 2 weeks in its heyday, and it was a lot of orders. It was a lot of work. I had 3 part-time employees working with me, and it was impressive the amount of orders we would ship out, and it was financially a positive. Like, I put myself through college doing it, but it wasn't ridiculously profitable. And so when I got in and kind of audited the numbers, like really finite, right? Like, I wasn't originally counting how much time I was spending doing it. I would just, I'd go to the airport and I'd pick them up and I'd spend all the time doing it. When I really got down and accounted for everything, it kind of showed the weakness of the whole system. It was profitable for kind of a solo venture and maybe working with a couple of friends here and there, but there was definitely nothing that I could take and change anything. It was a little bit of quick cash while I was doing school at my undergrad at that time. But yeah, so tons of Neocaridina shrimp. That's where I learned a lot about Neocaridina shrimp. At the time, I was still breeding guppies just for my local area, but shrimp are what I was primarily importing and then selling on Amazon.
So when you started doing this is at the time where Neos were going what about $10 a piece or something like that. Because I remember when I remember discovering you know the shrimp, they were pretty expensive to get started because everybody was talking about having to get at least a group of 10 to get started. And at 10 they ranged depending on where you bought them, it was like about $8 on average to about $10 to $12 depending on where you were getting them from. But I remember they used to be yeah, I used to think, damn, it's pretty expensive to get started. You got to drop $100 right off the bat if you want to start off with just some regular basic sherry shrimp. And then all the other colors started popping up, and I mean, I'm surprised how much the market has deflated
Yeah.
compared to when it first started.
Yeah, and I think we'll keep seeing that trajectory. I don't think we've bottomed out quite yet. So yeah, when I started selling on Amazon, I think I sold 10 shrimp for somewhere in the neighborhood of like 45 or $50, which was cheaper than in store by a lot. But at that time, it was a good price. Um, and I think now you can get 20 shrimp for like $30. So I mean, it is definitely been cut down probably to 20% of what it used to be or less, um, which is incredible. I mean, it's kind of crazy to see I mean, that's not the only thing that's done that, but it's weird to see how fast it's fallen. Um, yeah, I mean, I remember importing them, and the actual import price has gone down too. It's not other factors that have caused the direct price to fall. The actual cost from the farms overseas has gone down substantially as well, and their production has gone through the roof. It's incredible to see what those farms look like. Um,
Yeah, I remember when they were first coming out though, they made it seem like they were super delicate. You know, you had to do I remember that was one of the reasons why I got turned off from shrimp at the beginning is because you had to go through everybody was doing drip acclimation and doing all these things where it's like, damn, these things are not only expensive, but they're really delicate. That's what they made it seem like. And it seemed like all content creators were doing that. There wasn't anybody out there. It was almost like they all went to one person and they took whatever they said and they make their own same videos saying exactly the
we
same thing
wouldn't
over
do
and
that.
over
That's not
again.
how this hobby works. What are you talking about? Yeah,
And and you would think they made it sound like they were almost impossible that you would kill them at any if you looked at them wrong that they would die. That's what they kind of made it sound like. Come to find out, they're like the water roaches. You can't at least neocaradinas in my experience, you really got to screw things up to kill them. I mean, if you're killing them, you're really doing something bad. But other than that, they just thrive. And so I that's part of why I think the market has kind of dropped off because so many people got into them that it's like anything else. Once the market gets a little bit flooded, hey, beautiful. Um, the market gets a little bit flooded. Price is obviously going to be driven down, but uh, I see them now going anywhere between like I think the guy here locally that sells them is like $4, and I've seen them as low as $2, and it's kind of like okay,
yeah,
I see that the bottom is kind of falling out of these, and people have come to realize they're not as. I remember they used to try to convince you needed special substrate for them, and you needed to almost have like RO water, and you had to remineralize, and that's fine and dandy for the Caradinas, but they I guess they were trying to treat them all exactly the same. Um, I waited a few years. They weren't necessarily cheap, but once I figured out all you had to do was keep them in hard water, and found out that our water here in Arizona is perfect for Neos. It was like, all right, I'll get in on this. And now, out of a colony of I think I had 10 sherries and I bought another group of 10. They were blue diamonds. I've got tanks full of them. Just kind of. I never cold them though. That's the only problem. I do have a lot of them that recessed back to more of the wild type,
yep,
which I don't care. I mean, I have them there as part of the cleaning crew, so they actually anything in my tank has a job. They're not living rent free. They're doing something. But
yeah.
but yeah, so that's what you started off with is that's how your business started is importing some of these shrimp.
Yep, yeah. Back when I was a kid, I had a tank of mollies, and they gave birth, and so I wound up bringing them up to Phoenix Tropicals. The lady there sold me some guppies. I started breeding those. Set up my first. This is actually my first rack of tanks here in the background. And so I forget how many this was even. I mean, that was the old 29-gallon, everything in that room. And from there, I would just breed guppies, bred endlers, started doing some snails, and then I finally found shrimp. Probably 2017, I started getting into shrimp. And yeah,
Yeah, this kind of divided by zeros kind of bring that up too. That a lot of people mistake. They don't know there's different types of shrimp. Especially new hobbyists. They'll see the crystal reds, and maybe they're here in Arizona and thinking, oh, I can just throw these in my regular tap water and they're going to do fine. That's why I don't mess with Caradinas personally, because I don't want to have to go through the whole process of getting an RODI and remineralizing. I don't need to do that because Neos are perfect. I don't have to do anything. Just throw them in the
I'm
water and
jealous of
let them do their
I'm
thing.
jealous of you, my water. I'm not that far from you, but my water is could not be worse for Neos. Actually, it's
Oh, okay.
painfully
You
bad.
got copper in the
We
water?
have copper in the water. We have arsenic in our water, and I mean my nitrate comes out at 15 from the tap with sometimes ammonia depending on the time of year. It's just
Yeah.
it's not my municipality is not having the best water for shrimp. So yeah, I definitely go through the remineralized process. But it's interesting. I talked a lot to people, and it's cool to me to see the different lenses that we all kind of view the hobby from. My lens is, I mean, total opposite from you, right? When I brought him the first time, killed him dead, and then I researched it, brought him in again, killed him dead, spent all my birthday and Christmas money, killed him dead, and it's like, wow, these are the hardest things to keep in the world. And that was probably 2016, 2017. And it wasn't until I learned remineralizer and how water chemistry works and calcium magnesium ratios and what's going on with all that. Then I kind of figured out, oh, you could actually do this. It's not that hard. It's not witchcraft. It just keeps like it's just chemistry. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Divided by Zero asked the question. He says, what makes up Caradina shrimp as opposed to Neocaradinas? How do you recognize each?
Yeah, I mean, it's like what's the difference between a dog and a cat, right? Like they're just different species. That's all. So different subsects of each species have different morphology that'll be kind of recognizable. Generally speaking, I recognize it. I mean, I know all the kind of common colors and denominations of each one. So when you're looking at kind of opacity, which is sort of the how transparent is the animal, very very high grade neos look very bright, but just in body shape alone and the opacity of color is how you can kind of tell. Generally speaking, though, I mean, the people that get into shrimp as shrimp nerds, you wind up, you just kind of memorize what all the different, versions of something that you've seen. I mean, there's only, I mean, probably 50 something odd versions that I've ever seen in person of all of them. You can get into the weeds, right? They make $1,000 shrimp, but of the ones you're going to ever see at a pet store, there's really only a couple of classic variations on the same theme.
Yeah, no, what I usually tell people is if it's really got cool colors, more than likely it's a Caradina. If it's just a regular red, blue, or yellow, orange, it's probably a Neo Caradina. You don't have those multiple colors like you have with the crystals, and there's so many variations. Um, I the I kind of just learned enough. Actually, I just learned enough for the Neos because I knew that was the only thing I could keep without having to do so much. I know a little bit about Caradinas, enough to know that I don't want to mess with them. And if Garden of Eater, obviously they're known for carrying all different types of species of fish. I mean of shrimp. They have the whole shrimp house thing, going for
Yep.
them. So there you can see different kinds of variations. And Caradinas are the ones that I think what happens is with Caradinas, the advantage is you can take um, two different color morphs, cross them, and probably create a new line. Um, and that's just what keeps happening. Then you can do that constantly over and over. Where the Neos, you might get a purple here, but it's not going to be something you're going to be able to establish. You might get some greens, but they're usually like one off. I mean, you can work at it, but they don't stay true for very long. There's a lot of culling that takes place. Even with the Caradinas, what I've seen is even some of the coals become their own line.
Hmm.
They're a coal, but now this is a different line, because it's pretty consistent the coal. So that's the only advantage, I guess, with the Caradinas. And obviously the water parameters are very different. Um, you know, Caradinas like it a little bit softer, and there's just some other things that are considered. And so that's the only reason why I love them. I love the colors that they have. My favorite are still, even though they're very basic, the crystal reds and the crystal blacks. Those shrimp have always been some of my favorite, but it's just I don't want to deal with that.
Yep. Yeah, you got to see some black King Kong shadow pandas. Those are my favorite. Those are some really brilliant looking shrimp. But yep, yeah, you really got to get dialed in with water chemistry to get it ironed out.
Yeah, and then the names are wild too. When you start getting to the Caradinas, they have all sorts of Taiwan bees, and it's like, all right, they have ones with orange eyes and blue bodies, and I mean, there's just so much. The other ones that I think I might try because they seem to be good for Arizona and the temperature is the Sulawesi. I think it's pretty what they're called. The ones with the white little legs that looks like they're always dancing.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah,
know what
they're
I'm talking?
Caradinia. They're Caradinia too, but yeah, they can take a little bit more KH in their water, which we have. So yeah, yeah, I'm actually looking on bringing in some of those ones. So I'm there's some really cool color morphs of those. You can get like the Harlequin ones are just drop dead gorgeous. They almost look like saltwater shrimp, to be honest, because they've
Okay.
been so segregated, right? I mean, they're all from. I mean, they're not all from, but I picture a lot of it's in Lake Poso and those other kind of ancient lakes around there in Indonesia. So they have a long time to drive to a specific look and color morph to get like the yellow cheek look and the red stripe. I mean, that looks like a saltwater shrimp if you ever seen one. But
Yeah, no, that's that. I've always, if I did a saltwater tank, and yeah, I still go back and forth whether I'm going to do that or not because it's a slippery slope. You start getting
yeah, it is.
salt water, and I know myself. I know what's going to happen. But if I set something up, I think it would be like a cube with some of the cleaner shrimp because I like the way they look. I don't need to
Yeah.
have fish. I don't need to have fish. I can throw some rocks, maybe some macroalgae and some shrimps, and I'd be happy with that tank.
Yep. And when you do, because I'll know you'll need probably RO to do it, let me know.
Yeah, that's the only reason why I don't mess with all this stuff. I've had RO. It's a pain in the butt because you got to collect the water. It's not at your disposal. It's like I like the convenience of tap water that I just turn the nozzle and it's on, and then when I'm done, I turn it off. Once you start getting into RO, you got to have collection points, and you got to. I don't know. It's just a lot. It's a lot more to it, and you can't do. Well, it depends. If you want to do a lot of water changes, you got to have a big reservoir, but
Yep.
that's the only thing that I see about it. And then everybody talks about how much waste water you also waste because it separates all that hardness and stuff like that. So, as it is, I think we waste a lot of water anyways. Um, especially being out here in the desert, it's kind of crazy. Um, when people say that they do weekly water changes, it's kind of like, oh, dude,
Yep.
that's a commodity there with the water out here. It's not. I can't do that. I try to extend the water changes as much as possible, um, and
Yeah.
just for that same reason. And when I do, I'll try to water my mesquite trees and some of the brush that we have around with that water. But you can only do so many before you got to start putting some down the drain. But
Yeah. Yep. I burn through water. That's no shortage there, but it's yeah, part of the business. That's part of it. And I don't know. I feel like the water that's going back down the drain is not exactly lost to earth. It's going right back to the same facility that's selling it back to me. So it's like a cycle.
so let's get into a little bit about the topic of what got you to decide to do the way you're laying out your videos in chapters. What leads you to that point? What happened that you decided, okay, I need to sort this out, lay it out like a book. How does that happen?
Yeah, let me see if I can flip to the page of my book. I'm sure I have it somewhere written out. The first time
When
where I
when
had
did
to,
you start keeping a book, and why did you start keeping it?
I've always just kept notes. Like I
You
did.
journal?
I did like engineering school, and then I did a master's degree. And a lot of people took like their laptops to school. It's kind of like the new thing. Everybody's got a laptop, and they're using like Microsoft OneNote or whatever. And I'll put myself up against anybody. You give me a notebook and a black pen, it's over. Like I promise, there's stuff going on paper. It's good things happening. So it's yeah. So I mean, and now the organization not there at all. Don't get me wrong. You can't read any of it after it's down there. But just the fact it went down there is good for me. So the uh, the big part about the video side of the world was I was struggling to document how to build a fish room. I knew what I wanted like was just a really good documentation source, especially for me to look back on. But it's kind of hard to say. Like I've seen a ton of. I mean, I watched as many as I could of everybody else doing it, and it's hard to place. Like I couldn't put my tongue exactly. What are they missing? And so I was like, well, I just want to document everything, which is a ridiculous documentation goal. But if you're going to document everything, what is everything? So I just sat down one day and I just listed it out. And I guess, I mean, I could show you what I got here, but I listed like 20 something odd things on a notebook where it was like, I have my goal up at the top, completely document the full process in a step by step series. I want to capture all of my tips and tricks and everything to look out for in a complete build so that I can do it again next time even better, right? Like that's the goal of the whole series. And then I started from the beginning and I just added, I have 24, I guess, videos in here. And then in later pages, I've made addendums to it and I've built on. So I have like I think it's 28 videos right now that I have planned for this whole series. And that is, I mean, it's pending. I could cut some or group some or make more. But all that to say, putting a series on YouTube of 20 something videos in a row, to me, that felt a little unmanageable. And so to make it more user friendly and to make it make a little bit more sense, I tried to group it sort of in the phases of the project. So we have getting started, that's chapter 1. And getting started is the one, I mean, I'm done with chapter 1. So all 5 videos are up there. And that's all the, thinking ahead of time. And then we have infrastructure that's kind of doing it all. Even I can open it up and read you all the next chapters. I don't know them all off the top of my head. I'm a nerd, but I'm not that good. Yeah. So I have the series 2 is infrastructure. Series 3 is all of the tank preparation. The series 4 is everything about the auto water change system, why I went with what I did, how to do it. Series 5 is just the stack and rack. We're building this thing out, how to put all the pieces together. Right now, you've done the infrastructure, you've done the tank prep, marry it all together. And then the last series is testing and launching a fish room. Just how to do all the stuff. I mean, that's what I've been doing recently. So
Yeah.
that's the effectively how to clean water off the floor video.
Now, one of the things is obviously you've had to have some past experiences that has kind of led you down to rethink how you're doing this. Um, how many fish rooms have you had? I mean, obviously, when you started doing the importation, were you already set up with a fish room, or was that kind of like all of us that it's like, oh shit, I'm in this now, and now I got to figure it out, and then you start throwing whatever tanks you have on hand and making it work, or did you even from then did you already have a vision of what you were doing?
Oh no, I'm still human. I definitely wound up doing the too many tank syndrome thing. It started with that. So in the PowerPoint slide you're looking at, I had effectively this corner rack, and so I could fit I don't know what eight tanks on the right, and I could fit eventually 10 tanks on the left. And then from there, I wound up putting a ladder in the room and then building another layer to that rack. This is actually my bedroom. My bed sits right next to that rack. And then after selling some more guppies, I saved up some money. I bought a 125-gallon tank, and then I wound up putting a whole bunch of tanks underneath it. I wonder if I have a picture of that in the PowerPoint. It'd be super cool if I did. I don't think I do. So then I had another 7 tanks, one of them being a 125, which is, I mean, having variation in tank size was just the key. I got to do all sorts of cool stuff because of it. And then my little brother wound up contracting some work for me. He was doing packaging for me while I was in school. And so he'd come home after high school and he'd just box a whole bunch of shrimp, catch them and box them. And eventually I was like, well, if you had fish tanks in your room, I'd give you some of the profit those tanks make. So then we got tanks in his room, and then I put some in the kitchen. I had some in the living room, some in the other living room, some in the bathroom. Yeah, they just kind of spread everywhere at that point.
Yeah, so the image that you have up there, is that from one of your old fish rooms, or is
Yep.
that
Yeah, that's
that
from my
was
bedroom. So that's the original bedroom fish room with the childhood multicolor wall behind it. You'll love to see it. And so from that, I just kind of built on. I built up, and I built another rack. And at that point, I wasn't doing any YouTube. I didn't really think about documentation or anything like that. The purpose was to do what I was doing and breed fish and then import. So, I mean, I have kind of pictures in passing with, just a bunch of orders on the bed and a whole bunch of stuff. And it's just all kind of madness, but no beautiful videos of me walking through it.
Yeah, Funk is asking. He's mentioned. Well, he stated that the Florida fish farms lost out to overseas imports pretty much. That's kind of what kind of did them in. He
Hmm.
says, "Have you learned what happened to them, and what do you plan to do different?"
Sure. Yeah. Well, there's a couple of different things. It's not. I don't think you can just say like you can't really point to one specific failure. I don't think it's that mechanical, right? Like your car engine blows up. I can go look at your engine and say you threw a rod. Like I know what happened, right? When a business fails like that, I think there's a lot of different things. I think it's gonna. I mean, I don't even know what specific Florida farm you're talking about. If I had to guess, though, in general, what's kind of happened is
Mhm.
people have gotten very poor with capital and managing the actual business overhead. And so, with swelling overhead, it's been very, very difficult to compete specifically on price. So, if price is what you're selling, you're gonna get undercut. And I mean, Florida fish farms is kind of a just that's just one example. I mean, go into any city and tell me how the mom and pop retail shops are doing, right? What about
Yeah.
local stores? I mean, you'll see Walmart's left and right. All the mom and pop shops got soaked up into that, and so it's no different. It's overseas manufacturing out competing local, and it's the same in our industry as we're seeing from lots of other industries. There's a couple of key differences that I want to get into as to why I think I can compete. And I actually have slides at the end of the show that are kind of there. It's really just the math behind it. Just to call it out, just to say it out loud, so that, if you're leaving before then, the difference is that we have to use air cargo. There's no other way,
Yeah.
and because we have to use that, it's such a limiting factor. Even if you are to get the livestock for free, maybe you have a family member in Indonesia that's just catching, beautiful neocaridina shrimp out of a pond, right? You're getting them for free. You still have to fly a jumbo box in. You're paying customs fees, which, I mean, and transshipping. And then if you don't live on the coast, you have to bring them in. All of that is a lot of money to bring it all in. And so, I mean, I have some math here at the end of what that actually costs per shrimp, even if you get the shrimp for free. And let me tell you, I've been looking at import lists. Shrimp are not free; they actually cost money.
Yeah.
And so, you're right. It has been hard for businesses to compete specifically on price. I think there are specific markets where it is possible, and I think by niching down, targeting specific things, I'm going to be able to compete. So, for example, just to give you some more on that, um, in the shrimp side of the world, I actually agree with everything you were saying. I think shrimp are actually a fairly decent beginner species. Although I failed with them a couple of times, in general, I'd probably say 60% of people have, success right off the rip, and another 20% of that total pie have success, quickly thereafter by tweaking just a couple of key things. That leaves a key 20% of the total people that buy shrimp that fail and fail, and they will continue to fail until they fix the underlying root cause of water chemistry. Just like you were saying with caridina shrimp, I could give you a million crystal reds, and what's going to happen is you're going to kill every one of them trying to keep them in Arizona tap water. I'm not saying it can't be done, and maybe a million to zero is a bad example, but we both know you're going to kill a lot of shrimp trying to keep crystals in tap water. You can try and try and try. They definitely don't want to be there. There's biological limitations for osmotic pressure that you're going to run into, and it's going to just be an uphill battle. And so for neocaridina, what that means is I'm doing everything standardized. So by remineralizing for neocaradinas, which I would agree in general, it's nominally overkill. By doing it, I can standardize it. What made me think this, by the way, is I was helping my buddy in Texas, and I was trying to get him to have success. And I wound up asking him like 40 questions about water chemistry. What's your GH? What's your KH? What's your pH? What's your magnesium to calcium ratio? What's your, right? Like, you can bomb somebody with 100 questions. And the answer is, it's going to cost me $100 to figure out what all the answers to all that stuff is. And I still haven't fixed the problem. With that same $100, you could have gone and bought an RO buddy on Amazon and a bag of powder online of remineralizer powder, and you would have been certain exactly what your water was going to be. And then from there, you can keep whatever you want. Now you have the setup. You like caridina? I hope you do. You want to do saltwater? Now you can. Like, at that point, you've now solved the underlying issue. So I'm actually targeting for shrimp people. I'm actually targeting people who have already failed. And I'm effectively offering, if you follow a standard set of instructions, like you start from zero, you add this amount of this remineralizer salt, it will match my water exactly, you have now perfectly ruled out water chemistry,
Hmm.
which to about 20% of people, I think, is the underlying root cause of failure, is just pure water chemistry failure.
But you don't think that for beginners it can overcomplicate things where it's a lot more steps versus just doing a straight water change?
Depends on what you're teaching them. I had this whole, that's actually, it's a good point. I'm not trying to discount it. I understand the barrier to entry is higher. I'd argue that a higher barrier to entry, as in terms of pure labor, is not mental. Like, I'm struggling to come up with an analogy to this, but simply doing more work doesn't make it intellectually more challenging. For example, all they have to know is I need to fill up my tank, and then I need to put 2 scoops of powder in the water and then
Yeah.
mix it, and then I can add shrimp. That to me is very beginner friendly. It's kind of the whole, just squirt, and that's fertilizer, right? Like, it's a very, it's a not a teaching methodology. It's a just, you add, just add water style remineralizer. I turned on the tracking on my camera. I forgot there's like AI human tracking. That's crazy. Technology will get you. But I guess my point there is, it is a higher threshold, a barrier to entry. But the people who have already failed that want success, they're willing to find success and they want it guaranteed. Like, especially me when I was there, like, I could not for the life of me figure out exactly what was wrong. Like, my GH and KH were fine, but I just wasn't reading enough to know that my calcium and magnesium was somehow off, and that's causing molt failure. Like,
Mhm.
that's a nightmare. Good luck trying to teach that to a beginner over the phone. Like, you're never going to get there. But I promise you, you take, distilled water, you can buy it at any Walmart in the world, right? You could make RO at home. You could go to, if you're in Arizona, there's water and ice on every corner, right? Wherever you want to get pure, fresh water, and you add the specific amount of salt, your water will be perfect. You can keep whatever you'd like in there. And to a beginner, that's the only way I can guarantee that somebody will have success. And that's what nobody else does in the shrimp world. Everybody will say, follow these steps and you'll probably have success. It's very different to say, no, you do this every time, and every single time it's standardized, you will have success. This is the recipe to success with neocaridina. Not that it's the only way to do it, but if you've struggled and if you've failed, if you want to know how to do it, here's exactly how I do it. It works every time. That, to me, especially when I'm helping other people, it doesn't get any easier than that.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on this a little bit. Is something I was going to ask you because one of the things that I've noticed, um, I've been very fortunate that I've not only made acquaintances with people here in the states that are keeping fish, but I've also have friends that keep stuff in Mexico. And one of the things that I find is because in order for them to circumvent the whole water issue, they're going and buying bottled water, and that's what they use to do their water changes. Did you ever look? Because you kind of touched on it, being able to go to one of these water dispensers. Have you ever taken a look at what that water looks like? If it's something that people, and I'm thinking because like a person, usually when they start off, they might have 1, 2 tanks at the beginning, and that's really inexpensive water because
Yeah.
you can fill up a water jug for $1.50.
Yep.
A 5 gallon water jug, which if you don't have to worry about doing, you know, remineralizing, running RO, changing cartridges, but I just never have gone and actually taken a test to see what's coming out of these dispense machines. I know some of them will be basically RO water. Some of them might have remineralization in them. I'm just curious. Did you ever take a look at see what the water chemistry was on those dispensing machines?
Yeah. I mean, mileage probably varies on this a lot. I'm sure it literally varies by location. I'm sure
Yeah.
the source water is going to change it. If they've kept up on filter maintenance, is going to change it. What they're actually selling, right? Is it drinking water, which is remineralized water? They're just not saying the word remineralizer, or is it pure RO or RODI water? That's all going to change it. But my local water and ice, I actually used them for years. I bought a whole bunch of those camping 5 gallon jugs. I take my dad's F-150 there. And that was how I did water changes on all those 10 gallons you're seeing there because I didn't have RO at the time. I wound up getting RO probably 4 years after I started importing using remineralizer just to save myself some money and time. But yeah, no, I used it for forever and it was good. Their water was good. I don't think I even got that lucky. As long as your RO's coming out, I do, honestly, under 30, if you know what your source water is and you're not dealing with anything potent, I mean, even 30 TDS under, it's starting with a good enough baseline that from there you can add the building blocks you need. And that extra 30 TDS of osmotic pressure is not going to matter at all for neocaridina, at least. Depends if you know your source water. If you have like really unclean, like if your water literally has lead and copper in it, like at traceable amounts,
Yeah.
um, like our water, like we have a house that uses copper piping, and Arizona, like our municipality, at least SRP, produces like a report about the Chandler water that we use, and sometimes it'll have extremely trace measurable amounts in the parts per billion range, which is still too high. You don't want it measurable at all, but I mean, to me, when you're taking out 90% of something that's in the parts per billion, never had a problem with neocaridina. So I would trust most of those places, and I think a lot of them actually give you a report. Depends on like the brand of the store that's selling water, but I know for some bottled water you can get reports of what's in the water. I've actually done that. That's why I don't use like Kirkland water because it is higher TDS and stuff like that. But yeah, I've heard of bottled water too. And distilled water is distilled water. You can't put that on a label in the United States if it's not. I think it's under like 12 or something TDS for distilled water.
Yeah, because you can go to Walmart and go to the baby section, and that's probably where you're going to find a lot of the distilled water because you use it for the formulas on the baby's bottle and stuff like that. So I mean, for people that I guess where the RO system really comes into play is whether you're really keeping some high end stuff that really needs to have the very controlled parameters like saltwater tanks. There's no way around it. You're going to need to get an RO system. But if it's somebody that wants to keep caridina shrimp or stuff like that, you could probably get away with buying a 2 gallon bottle of water and being able to do water changes with that and and just remineralize to whatever it is you need to get it to whatever you know how much minerals the water needs to have for the shrimp. Um, I think when you start getting more into when it goes beyond, it's the intermediate because once you become an intermediate, it's when you start getting MTS real bad,
Yep.
and you want to have multiple tanks. That's when I've always said if you're going to have more than 5 tanks, maybe an RO system is worth it because now you're it's multiple tanks, and depending on the size of those tanks, especially if you got a fish wall, a fish room, whatever, any of that at that point, yeah, I could see somebody making that investment. I know for the longest time I got away with using those inline RV filters,
Yep.
the water line, the big old
Yeah. Yeah.
carbon block cart. I used that for a long time because it got too expensive to buying dechlorinator. And I'm very lucky because here in Yuma they don't use chloramines; they use chlorine.
Yep. Same
So
here, actually. Yeah.
yeah, so I could either let that water sit overnight with the air stone, or I could find a way where it would, the carbon blocker that would remove the chlorine from it, and it actually even helped to remove some of the heavier minerals in the water because I noticed that when I started using that carbon block, I started getting less calcium development on the glass.
Hmm.
That I thought that was a happy surprise. I was not expecting that. The only reason I was running that is because I didn't want to be buying dechlorinator anymore, and
Yeah.
it was enough where it did remove a lot of that hardness. I didn't have that calcium buildup as bad as
Hmm. Interesting.
before using it.
Yeah. Huh. I wonder what the chemistry there looks like. Yeah. Interesting. It shouldn't remove any calcium. I mean, if it's just carbon, but maybe there's something else in there that's acting as maybe they have DI beads or something inside the filter. I don't know what the filter has in it, of course, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting.
Unless it was just moving the bigger particles that are in the water. I don't know, but it was. I noticed that was a different. It was a difference. It was the
Yeah.
water was not.
Yeah.
I
Sometimes they have
was getting
sediment pre-filters. Yeah.
yeah. I was getting the evaporation, and I wasn't getting that dreaded lines on the tanks
Yeah.
like I was before. And as a matter
Yeah.
of fact, I used it for so long that some of the other tanks kind of started losing it.
That's awesome.
so, so I was like, cool. This was a real pleasant surprise to be able to be able to pull that off with the. And like I said, it's just you go to again Walmart because I go to Walmart because that's the go to store down here. And you go to the RV section, and that's what they use to pump water, potable water into their water system so that they can have clean water.
Yep.
So, but as far as
Yeah.
what's in it, other than carbon, I don't know.
Can I make one more point actually while we're still on this topic before
Yeah,
moving on? So you said something real key there that I want to harp on it for anybody listening. A lot of it about the RO. I mean, I talk a lot about RO because I have 100 something tanks. If you don't have a bunch of tanks, I mean, the amount of gallons that you need to remineralize should drive how you do it. If you have a 6 gallon tank and you do, yearly water changes, do not get an RO machine. It's never going to pay for itself, right?
yeah,
Um, it's absolutely the amount of water that you're going to go through about justifying it. The other point, though, the one point that I think we're missing in this conversation that I think is actually useful, I think locale matters so much. And this is a freshwater thing only. Saltwater
yeah,
people don't run into this. What's interesting in the saltwater world, I don't know if you guys pay attention to it at all, but there's a level of uniformity in the hobby where there's still a ton of uniqueness, but the uniqueness is pretty like generally spread out pretty evenly. And what I mean by that is like we have a huge killifish society here in Arizona, right? We
yeah,
have a huge cichlid population here in Arizona. And in, up in, Maine, they have a huge discus thing going on. And in California, it's tons of shrimp and it's tons of, and so we kind of like geographically, there's kind of groups of people that wind up doing the same thing. I don't just think it's because somebody bred it there and it locally stayed there. That might be part of it. I think what matters a lot more is that our local water chemistry drives what finds success and not the other way around. And so if you actually could keep anything you want, I might have discus, right? But
yeah,
Arizona tap water doesn't do discus, so I don't do it, right? And so there's people out there in Washington State that they can keep Caridina shrimp in their tap water. Now they cannot keep Neocaridina in their tap water. So for
yeah,
them, they have to doctor it. And so no matter where you are, you're going to find species that work, species that don't. Some species have a bigger, Venn diagram cross section of where they wind up working. But I do think as a hobby, driving towards some level of, standardization of finding something that works and giving it to beginners, it might be something that finds a lot of success long term because the whole, take goldfish at the bag at the state farm kind of thing. Like, I mean, if you just get given a fish and now you have to figure out how to make it work, that's a pretty good recipe for disaster, right? Like you should wind up saying, what do I want? What fish do I want to keep? And then, from there you'll figure out how do I keep it alive.
yeah. Yeah, no, and it doesn't only apply to fish. I think it for in my case, I figured out which plants were the ones that thrived in my water, and which others plants that just don't do well. Whether it's temperature or water chemistry, they just don't thrive in my water. So I've kind of gone away from those, and you know, kind of stayed with the ones that seem to thrive. And it's kind of the same thing with fish. Live bears do really well for us here in Arizona. There's
Yep.
enough hardness in the water that they do well. Same reason neocaridinas do so well. But yeah, it's you'll be hard pressed to keep. Um, I don't know, maybe a pistos. What else needs some of the more
Yeah, all those South American, anything biotope down there
tetras.
from
Yeah,
from the Amazon. I mean, it's hard to replicate, 5.8 pH when we have 30 DGH coming out of the tap.
yep. So going back to the whole importation, what was the thing that just kind of made you go, all right, I can't continue to do this. I need to figure out a workaround. What was the one thing that happened to you that made you go away from wanting to continue to import stuff?
Hmm. It's a good question. I haven't really thought of like a. I do think it would be sort of the straw that broke the camel's back thing, right? Like there was
Yeah,
already a lot of like problem with it. Um, to me, okay, it was kind of there's probably a kind of a 1-2 punch that kind of knocked it out for me. For one, it was financially we had a couple of really bad months in a row,
mm,
and I attribute that partially to summer, like it was just hot, and shrimp when you're importing them it matters. One of the imports, it was like it wound up sitting at Sky Harbor for probably 4 or 5 hours, which is just it's just too long. Came in really rough, and then So like it was a couple of like bad luck, I guess, kind of temperature things in a row, followed by me getting really deep into the accounting and going incredibly granular of like retroactive accounting
Yeah.
and finding the amount of time I was wasting. And I call it the MIA percent. And it's kind of this metric that I wound up coming up with. It's just the loss of shrimp. But the reason I call it MIA is shrimp don't die like fish do. If you go to a Petco right now, you'll find a bunch of dead fish floating around, and they grab a catch can and they'll pull 100 dead fish every morning before you show up there. But the fish bodies stay in the tank. Shrimp don't have the same thing. And so when you lose, let's say you bring in 4,000 shrimp and you're keeping, I don't know, I was keeping 250 plus shrimp in a 10-gallon. The density is such that when they die, they will eat each other before you ever find it. And so what happens is you bring in, let's say you just make numbers round, you brought in 100 of them, you'll sell and sell and sell, and then you'll look in the tank and there's not a single shrimp left in the tank. And if you're good, you will have stopped selling at that point. You're not trying to make more orders. So we were good at inventory accounting. We weren't overselling how many we had. We would turn off, oh, we're out, stop selling.
Yeah.
But you look at the math and you're like, okay, I brought in 8,000 red shrimp and I sold 4,500. How are we out, right? And then you start going back. You're like, oh, well, I took detailed notes of how many we lost in dead on arrival. And okay, out of 4,000, I had one bag went bad, so I have 200 dead there. Where's the other? What happened to the rest of them? And we kind of came up with this figure of like it's just a loss. There's an attrition amount. You talked about it too, but with shrimp especially, there is just a large percentage that wind up failing within the first 2 weeks. And I called it an MIA percent, and I always kind of treated it as this kind of weird variable of like, well, it's just kind of general attrition. It's not. I've really gotten dialed in as to what happens. And the problem with shrimp is that they're a molting invertebrate. And so in the first couple of weeks, they're going to have stress molts. So you don't know your true attrition until like 2 weeks after you've brought them in. And that is just very difficult to account for. And the numbers that I was seeing were frankly gross. Like it's too many dead for me to feel comfy continuing that. And it makes it such that it's less financially viable. The numbers that I was running back then was about 20% total loss. So I would see somewhere in the neighborhood of like 2 to 5% DOA, like literally like open up the box, 2 to 5%, everything's dead already, which is usually a whole bag. Like, one out of every so many bags, the whole bag's dead, or they're all in the process of dying rapidly. And then from there would be another, 15% attrition, missing in action, where they'd fail molts and effectively cannibalize each other, where you never find bodies and you just wind up with less than you had. And it's not atypical. I talked to many other importers. I talked to some of the big wholesalers that import and then wholesale out to retailers. I talked to local retail stores. I talked to not local. I talked to some retail stores out in Florida. It's just a part of the way the industry with shrimp works. And the problem is that it's a financial issue, because not only are you losing the money on the shrimp, you had to pay for air cargo to fly them in to then fail in that manner. And it's not as profitable as like importing. We talked off air at the beginning of this for a second about the plants, and you can undercut a market to an extent, and you can kind of like not lose money, not make money. You're kind of at you're at a 1 or 2% margin, and you can kind of waffle there for a while until you beat out some competitors. And you'll see that on Amazon. If you look at those people selling 20 shrimp for $30, when you do the math on that, their cost of goods sold is pretty low. Like they're not extremely profitable. And that's the point. Like they are a very high volume, very low margin game, and it's extremely cutthroat. And that's the game they're playing, right? Like I want to make a penny per shrimp times a billion shrimp. That works very well for breeders. The old aquarium co-op adage was, you want to see the people making money in it, go look at the goldfish farms, the feeder goldfish farms, the feeder guppy farms. They're making a penny per fish times a billion fish. That adage, that reigns true. Those people are making a killing. but because they're breeding it, not because they imported a billion goldfish.
Yeah.
When you're on the other end of the stick, when you're losing the 20% missing in action, that accounting doesn't still add up. Um, and if you don't believe me, go look at the people that are importing the incredible quantities and notice that nobody's driving a Bugatti. It's a problem, right? If you're going to sell, let's say, I don't know, I don't want to name names, but you go look on Amazon, pick your top seller that sells, I don't know, 3,000 orders a month. 3,000 orders a month, you should be raking it in. You're selling a lot of livestock. And what I found, and what they've also now found, is you're not making very much money. You'll have good months. You'll make a couple grand here or there, but it's not a killing. And it's a lot of work for not very much money. And it only takes 1 month for it to go wrong.
Yeah. Shit. I had a question that I was.
Yeah. Sorry, I rambled there.
No. That's fine. That's fine. And I was. Well, anyways, it's just part of being old. It'll come to me later on. Okay, that's what it was. I know that you keep emphasizing that you're trying to, dig into the import market. Now, my whole thing is, are you when you're talking about cutting into the import market, are you looking at it as a local thing, as a statewide thing, as a countrywide thing? What's your goal?
National.
What is your goal with that?
National. Yeah, my goal is absolutely across at least the 48 contiguous. I mean, in my eyes, there's not too much that you can do for the Hawaiis and Alaskas of the world, just for the restrictions of selling to the island, and the extra time and cost of Alaska doesn't make it really pencil. But yeah, to the most of the United States is the goal. When you look at the amount of shrimp being brought in, I could literally I have 150, I forget, 158 tanks or something like that with automation on them. And I could dedicate all of those tanks to just red shrimp, or pick a less popular. I could just do yellow shrimp. Okay. And reds are a lot more popular than yellow, by the way. I could do just yellow shrimp, and I wouldn't make a dent in the total number of yellow shrimp that gets sold in the United States. It's a drop in a bucket. And so for me, the whole purpose here is to proof out scalability and to scale. So part of that is going to be partnering with other people doing it. So I'm already, just through YouTube, people have been reaching out to me. I've talked to a handful of different people with ranging from, 20 to 30 tanks that, they just have a small operation going, to a couple of different people that are setting up 3 acres of stuff going on in Georgia. Talked to him yesterday. Of ponds outside in Georgia, a couple people out in Florida. I think it's going to take a lot of hands on deck. It's going to take a lot of people. And I think there's going to be a mix of people that are doing indoor with automation, because labor is just so expensive here, and overhead, you have to automate, in my opinion. There's going to be a mix of indoor and outdoor to compete at gross scale. Like, for example, I think we probably import somewhere in the neighborhood of like 10 million shrimp a year in America. When you're talking 10 million shrimp, doesn't matter how many 20-gallon longs you put in a room. You need Costco's and Costco's and Costco's. It just doesn't work. However, if you have a bunch of people like me that have automated indoor systems that can produce gorgeous starting livestock, that can supply the breeders that breed in incredible quantity, that's the outdoor pond people that can do year round, because we have those here in America too. There's plenty of places in California, Florida, Georgia, the southern part of the United States that stays warm enough to do this kind of outdoor thing. And the overhead cost of land that you already own is zero. The ponds you need to maintain, but the harvest cost is a harvest cost either way. I do think we can compete on scale. And so, yeah, my goal is, my kids probably won't be into fish, but the people that come, 20, 30 years down the line, I would love for people to walk into any local fish store and see more than half of the fish were local in America somewhere, born and raised. That would feel like an absolute win.
I really thought that with the whole implementation of tariffs, that was really going to drive the market here in the States to encourage people to get into breeding, but that has not been the case. That on the contrary, yeah, go ahead.
You know what? I'll skip ahead. I have a whole bunch of slides about this whole build out, and I'd love to talk about it if we have time, but if not, that's okay. I have a couple of slides here, and you can see that. Yeah, thank you. Um, I hear you can actually see exactly why the tariffs don't matter at all mathematically. So follow along here up at the top. We're talking about a jumbo box. That's a common size box that you'll buy. Usually it's the best price per kilogram. The jumbo box fits about 4,000 Neocaridina shrimp. And I'm looking over here at the right now. So on the right, you have, the cost of livestock. Let's say you bought them for 20 cents a piece. Cost of livestock is $800 for the whole 4,000 of them. The additional tariff cost, it's only $80. Our tariffs right now are 10%. So it's $80. Then you have air freight from jumbo. So you can do it from Indonesia, Taiwan, whatever. It's $450 plus. $450 is pretty low. I'm actually paying $600 a jumbo right now from Indonesia. So I'm trying to be real conservative with these numbers. I think this is really fair here. $450 for the actual freight charge, $20 packing charge. You could find people that'll do it for $15, but you got to pay the people that actually bag it, and they're putting in a styrofoam cooler. Usually you're paying for that and that fee. Then you have to transship them. Now there are importers in California that there's LA and Florida are kind of the two big hubs, but New York as well, where you don't have to transship. You could just grab it straight from customs. You still have to pay a customs fee. So I don't actually see the breakdown. I think the customs fee is probably in the neighborhood of like $50 to $100. I don't know. It could be cheaper. But you still have to pay customs to get them that same day to get somebody to inspect it and buy it off and sign their name on it. But the transshipping cost is a pain in the butt to me because I need to have somebody in California, in LA, grab the box, walk it across the street to Southwest, and then ship it back to me. So I pay for somebody to do that. And everybody else that's not on the coast has to do that too. So that's not unique. Everybody doing that, all those ones you see in Texas, they have to do it. There's only a couple of port of entries in America. And so most people have to go through a transshipper. And those that don't, your whole business has to be in California. If you want to talk about regulation, legal, and tax issues, go try to start a business in California. It's ridiculous. So you're paying for it one way or another, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But that transshipper fee is $320. That includes the customs fee. The last leg cargo fee, that's the Southwest cargo to get from California or Florida, wherever you're coming into, to me. Obviously, if it's Florida to Arizona, it's going to be more than California to Arizona. Mileage may vary, but we're calling it 90. That's what it is to me for a jumbo. And then for landing and unpacking, when I send an employee to go grab a package and, unbox it and float all the bags and, they have to label all the tanks. They did it. When I was doing it, it was about $20 to go pay somebody per box. I'd always usually do a few boxes to make it worth their time, right? I'll give you $60, go grab 3 boxes, take them home. It's, it's an hour of work, maybe 2 hours of work for $60, whatever. It made sense back then. But you can see this is a total cost. It's $1,700 just about to bring in a jumbo box of shrimp. And then I'll draw you back up to the top left there. You can see we bought 4,000 shrimp, but you're definitely gonna have some DOA. You might not have 5% on the specific first box you buy, but long term, if you plan to do this as a business, this is the way you're doing it. You have to assume some DOA. You will lose a bag of shrimp here or there. It's just the nature of importing. And then you see my missing in action percent. During the couple of weeks while you have them, while you're selling them, you're going to lose more. It's just failed molts. That's a part of it. I haven't found importers that are able to not have missing in action percent. So you can see here, it's a total of 20% loss off the top. I think that's pretty fair. I think that's pretty normal. I'm sure there's better importers out there that can get a slightly higher percent, especially if they're partnered with the farms and they know what water chemistry they're shooting for. But I definitely think 20% is really fair from my experience and the people I've talked to. So in this example, $1,780 was my cost. I have 3,200 shrimp. That's a price per shrimp of 56 cents a shrimp. That's you being the direct importer. So that's not a wholesaler. That's literally you now have them in your tanks direct from the farm you bought them from in Taiwan. And then down here beneath that, you can see, even if you don't kill 20%, even if you have 100% survival, 4,000 shrimp at $1,780 still costs 45 cents a piece. So even if you're magic and you're better than everybody in the world, which you're probably not, but say you were forever, you're still paying 45 cents a shrimp. And then the bottom number, I get a kick at this one. That's, real. That's, we all know you're losing 20%. So let's be real. You're losing 20%. But let's say you have a contact that's literally scooping you free shrimp off the bottom. You're still paying 28 cents a shrimp, even if the shrimp you bought was free. I think that number is hysterical. Still almost 30 cents a shrimp. with free shrimp. And that's just kind of how importing goes. And so you can see there, that's why I don't think the tariff cost really matters as much. You can see $80 is sort of a drop in the bucket at 1780.
Okay. Wow.
What are your thoughts? I don't need to ramble too much more on spreadsheets. I had another. The next page here was just some thoughts about how much it actually costs to make them in America. But
Yeah,
um,
why don't you go over that, and so they can get a comparison as to why you think it's feasible
sure,
to do it here.
yeah, absolutely. So again, last slide, somewhere between 30 cents, which is fake. I mean, that's if you're getting them for free. So it's really somewhere around 35, 40 cents up to about 56 cents. Where in my past of doing it, 56 cents a shrimp is more accurate. But here's the cost to do it in America. I'm going to use one of my rooms as an example. I have 70 20-gallon long fish tanks. It's in a room that's about 500 square foot. So let's say I'm paying $700 a month rent for that room. Obviously, I'm not. It's just in my house. But you have to assume to make it scalable that you are paying all the different pieces of the pie. Otherwise, the number is going to, of course, look good. So let's say I'm paying $700 a month in rent for the space of those tanks. And by the way, there's no reason you need to do this in retail environment. So I got buddies of mine who I had look over this, and they're like, "Good luck renting 500 square foot for $700. You definitely don't have to. You can. There's no reason to go retail. You should at scale. I think you should go industrial. But
Yeah.
even still, the dollar a square foot mark, not including cam fees, is still widely popular, even here up in Phoenix Metro. So I think that's a fair number. And then labor. This is cleaning. So $20 an hour is what I pay people. 8 hours a week for this whole room. So I just have somebody. They usually come once a day or once a week, a whole day, once a week. That's $700 a month. Electricity for just this room is $150. My water for just this room is $30. My food, let's say I'm feeding top of the line premium stuff, that's $200 a month. Remineralizer, just the cost of the salts added is $30. Just some general other supplies is about $100. So you can see my total monthly overhead just for that room, somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,900. And there's 70 tanks in that room again. So my price per tank per month, which is a lot of pers, but that's how we do things around here. My price per tank per month is about $30 per tank per month. And so you can see here, it matters how many shrimp are you going to produce per tank, obviously. But usually I estimate somewhere in the neighborhood of about 60 shrimp in a 20-gallon tank when I'm not really putting my foot on the gas. You can get a lot higher volume. It's like down here, this 100 shrimp per 20-gallon. That's probably pushing it, in my opinion, at least from my experience. I know people who do actually. If you look up Mark Shelley, who does Neocaridina, from the numbers he's put out publicly and my math I've done, he's either missing something, and he's a good dude, so there's nothing against him. He's either missing something, which is totally possible, or by my calculation, he's doing somewhere in the neighborhood of about 150 shrimp per 20 gallons of breeding space a month. And I don't think that's unfeasible. I don't think it's untrue. It's more than I'm able to do. But in very, very mature established tanks, especially with people that might have more time to spend on it, obviously then your labor rate's going higher too, right? So maybe he's spending more price per tank to produce more, right? Like you even out the costs in that capacity. But at least here you can see what I look at when I'm doing my numbers. So I'm shooting for 60 shrimp a month, and that puts me directly competitive with the other people that are importing. So my cost per shrimp is somewhere between 36 and 55 cents a shrimp, directly comparable to your, somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 something to 50 something cents a shrimp. And that's when people ask why I think I compete. That's the math behind why I think I can compete.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. Now, in order to scale up, like you said, you're going to have to depend on other people then to be able to scale up.
No, so I plan on scaling my operation independent of what other folks do.
Okay.
I think, and this is part of why I created YouTube. I think it's such a ridiculous goal, just to say it out loud. It's crazy. It's still crazy for me to think about it. There is so much money flowing through this industry. To change it at the rate of change that I'm looking for, I think it's foolish not to ask other people that are in positions to help, to partner with and help, especially if you can help each other, right? Why shoot each other in the foot when we're both kind of fighting the same enemy here? The people that I talk to, there's a large community of people that breed shrimp at a small scale that are looking to find ways to make it more profitable. They're looking for outlets. I absolutely would love to partner with people that I can in some capacity. I don't even know the perfect way to, or at least directly do what we can to work together towards that common goal. But no, my operation is my own, and it's not like a direct symbiosis of requiring other people to have outdoor farms for this to be profitable. The math you saw there is literally just my system, the way it sits today. And if it's profitable, my goal is to scale up from there. So it would be a warehouse from there, and then possibly a property with a warehouse with an outdoor section. I'd love to go into the more mass production of the outdoor, but in Arizona, that's not going to be feasible. But yeah, I mean, I got a big dream on me. I know that.
Well, in Arizona, you would have to find almost like they're set up like where you know the sheds where they'll store hay, where it's just a shade. You could if you
Mhm.
could find a place like that. They used to be an old hay storage or whatever. You could put the same type of outdoor fans that they use for the livestock, for the cattle and stuff like that, and just circulate the air. And with the shade and the fans, you would be able to mass produce outdoors in whatever type of containers you decide to use, whether it's cement vaults or rubber totes or whatever, and be able to pull off doing outdoor aquaculture.
Yeah, yeah, and that's really at that scale is where you can make an impact on a supply chain, right? I'm not delusional enough to think that my own, a couple of fish rooms is going to change anything about a supply chain today. But this is enough of a proof of concept where hopefully it can inspire some other folks, generate some partnerships with some other people, and proof of concept enough to me and produce some profit to go to a scale where you actually could make a dent. There is a big market for just shrimp and just guppies, and it's incredible. And I mean, it's not like I only care about shrimp and guppies either, right? Like the whole point is the supply chain for the hobbyist and the beginner. I'd love to branch off into logically, right, not jump
Yeah.
from guppies to discus, but I think platies and swordtails is a real logical. I think snails go well with that, and then out from there. So even in these fish rooms, I'll wind up keeping swordtails. I'm sure I love swordtails. Maybe plecos, maybe snails, and some other things, but I think niching down a lot, like really dialing into a couple of things, is super important, at least from the business side.
Yeah. I mean, at the scale where you're talking about it, it wouldn't be logical to do it. But I think somebody with the small fish room, if they wanted to do that, I think the combination of guppy and shrimp is a perfect one because you'll have the shrimp that'll populate the bottom part of the tank, and then you have the rest of the tank for the guppies. The reason I say for your situation is you're trying to have as much success with the shrimp. And sometimes if you put a predator in there, even though you have hiding spots and stuff like that, some of them aren't going to get picked off. So at this point, you're trying to maximize production. So I don't think you're doing it right where you're keeping two species in one tank.
It depends. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Because I mean, even with 150 something tanks, I'm still limited by tank space. I mean, that never goes away. And so when I'm doing line breeding with guppies, sometimes I need somewhere to put, just I need a single male to sit in a tank.
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
scared to put a single male in a
Yeah.
tank full of shrimp breeding, but I definitely am not going to colony breed both in a colony, one tank with both colonies. I think that
Yeah.
you'd wind up kind of shooting yourself in the foot there.
Yeah. you you have your guppies eating your profits.
Yeah, true that.
uh, so going back to the build out of your fish room, I know in the videos it seems like you're still progressively doing it, but are you complete now and you're just kind of progressively putting them out? Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So both rooms are up and running. I'm breeding. I have fish and shrimp in both rooms, which feels crazy to say. I'm still doing some testing. I'm still, I mean, I don't think it'll ever be done playing with stuff and experimenting, but the construction phase is over. The testing is done. Both rooms have my kind of seal of approval. It's exciting. So there's some more stuff I'm looking at with automation. But yeah, so far it's really cool. And do you want me to go? I can kind of burn through some slides if you want me to show people some pictures.
Sure. What I was going to ask you is once you're up and running, As far as how are you going to market it? Are you looking mostly to do wholesales, or are you going to do a lot of retail sales? What's your business strategy when it comes to that?
Yeah, I'm pretty set on direct to consumer.
Okay.
So I think it's a better model for me. It's what I got used to, right? Like I used to do Amazon, so I feel really comfy with all of the shipping at high volume. I've done all of my own experimentation. I'm actually going to redo some of those experiments to get some data out there for everybody. I think that would actually help a lot of people is just to show people what the best packing looks like, how to ship live animals in the mail with really high success rate. Um, and so I've done all that stuff, so I feel really comfy with all that. And I think my personal opinion is I think that model is going to be one of the future where I'd love to support some retail shops and some mom and pop shops, but I don't think going purely as like a wholesaler that distributes to local retailers. I think it would just be kind of a nightmare for me personally.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's what I was kind of curious. Now, obviously, if people were interested in purchasing from you, those sites are up and running now.
Nope.
No, no, I okay,
Nope. Yeah, I have not put up a website yet. I mean, I have the domain name, so it's official. But no, I've prioritized getting the fundamentals and the basic stuff going. So right now, I'm still like 90% focused just in doing what my actual like daily tasking is. Right. So I'm breeding stuff, cleaning tanks. I'm still setting everything up. I need to still set up the whole shipping station. There's still work to be done.
okay,
And so like I'm still in that kind of phase of prep, but I don't know. I'm thinking probably December. I'll put up a website, and I guess I'll sort of throw it out there. YouTube. The purpose of YouTube was never just to be the guy with the cloak full of whatever. I got watches. Who wants watches? Like that's not really the point. I mean, to be honest, if it came down to it, and YouTube wound up totally flopping, like if I go down a bunch of flames, like Funk said, um, Amazon is still an incredible place to sell incredible quantity. And so my hope is to be able to compete on price where I could. And my hope is that YouTube takes off and I have an audience of people that wants quality enough that I don't have to. I'd
yeah,
rather spend a little bit and sell higher quality things to people that are willing to pay for it than cater to people that don't care at all. But that's personal preference. That doesn't impact the business, in my opinion.
yeah, yeah. Now, are you gonna obviously while you're gonna ship nationwide?
Yep.
Um, are you gonna have any restrictions as to what time of the year you're gonna be shipping out? Because I know that's kind of been some of the challenges where we're at is trying to keep the temperatures down.
Yeah, and in my experience, I never have. I know other people who do. Um, I I don't think it's really viable to do so. Like at least
Okay.
not a business. I think it's really difficult. I could tell you my secret though. I'll give this to everybody watching. There's like a little bonus point. This is probably worth more than everything you heard here. So this one's a good one, folks. The secret, if you want to successfully ship live animals in the mail, is hold at local post office for pickup. It's something most people don't want to do, especially on Amazon, because they're used to stuff showing up at their door. These are live animals, folks. And so when I was shipping on Amazon, that was the only option I offered. It's like you either want my product and it's going to go to your post office, it's not going to your door, or you're not willing to do it. Because I'm not willing to take the risk that the post office guy is going to dump it off at your lawn at 6 a.m. and you're off at work all day. Like
Yeah.
you don't have control over that. And so the hold at local post office for pickup, it is an incredible resource. It's just such a benefit because the post office is climate controlled. Even when they're not climate controlled in the bins that they're storing them in, it's you have the luxury of they're going to be like the odds that they're sitting on top in the sun are nothing. There's going to be a million other packages in those big roll around bins they have. At least in my opinion, I had phenomenal success. And the people that I sold to, like the feedback I got from people was, yeah, I forgot to go to the local post office. I had to pick it up tomorrow. Sucks. Why is it at the local post office? You know what? When you pick them up tomorrow morning, they're still alive.
Yeah.
Like my job as the seller is to get live animals to your door, or not to your door. My goal is to get them live in your tank, and so I need them to get alive to you. And the local post office is a secret weapon. Every single carrier can do it. Even USPS. I know FedEx can do it. UPS does it. You can do it if you use Pirate Ship. You can use it if you use ShipStation. If you use Amazon or eBay natively, even Aquabid probably has the ability when you're printing a shipping label. Um, it's a good idea to do. And I think if we could train consumers to expect that, if you're going to buy a live animal, expect to go pick it up and it's going to be alive every time. Oh, it's such a benefit. And dealing with angry people with dead fish was so annoying. So when I made that switch, saved me infinite amount of time trying to explain to people that it's not my fault you left it on your doorstep for 9 hours, right?
Hey, you know what? Here in Arizona, you don't. It only takes 15 minutes.
Yep,
You leave a
absolutely.
package out, and especially if it's in direct sunlight, because not everything has shade. Um, it'll start. You know, the I think the biggest problem though, and the reason why it doesn't take so long, and this is something that I've kind of figured out. The problem is the delivery routes, because a lot of these trucks are just tin boxes, and it's already 114 outside. The internal temperature of these cabs of these things gets up to about 120, 25.
Yep,
So it doesn't take very long, even though they're not in sunlight. They're baking. They're in an oven. That's
yep,
basically your package is in an oven, and then they go and lay it directly at your doorsteps, which just happens to be in direct sunlight. It doesn't take very long to be able to cook fish. So that's one of the things why I've always been hesitant to order stuff in the summer here. Um, I've just had more negative experience than positive experiences with ordering fish in the summer times. Winter times, I'll order all day long because it's
yep,
going to be fine. I mean, they're not going to freeze. We're the total opposite of the rest of the country, where they're worried about stuff freezing solid. That's not going to happen with us. It's actually probably ideal temperatures for packaging and shipping stuff. They're not going to get cold enough to where it's going to kill anything inside the package. But the heat, and I don't care how much insulation you put in that thing. It's the time that they spend in the back of the delivery truck that's
yep,
going to get you, because it's depending on where you're on that route. You could either be the first drop off, or you're going to be the very last drop off of the day. And
and
if
both
you're
are bad.
if you're that, you're good luck. You're probably going to open up fish stew.
Yep. But even if you're the first guy, right? Like, even if you're lucky enough that you're, house number one in whatever the local mail carrier's route is, what are the odds you're home sitting there waiting for it, right? Like, most people have jobs, they're off at work all day. Like, I know I am. Like, oh, it's such a pain, especially like when you come home and you're like, I buy plenty of fish online. Like, the delivery to your door, even like sometimes I'll request it because like now that I know that local post office is better, I'll request sellers send it to my local post office, but
Yeah.
they don't even really have the logistics to how to market as a custom order or whatever like that. And so it's yeah, in the summer I try not to order anything.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing you learn living out here. It's just unless you like to be a gambler, go ahead. But more than likely, you'll either have them overnight, where you're going to be home, because you can, if you're scheduling overnight, you can schedule it for a day off or something and have better luck that way. Or like you said, have them hold it at the post office or wherever facility is bringing it in.
Yeah, something interesting to note, just to call it out there. What's funny is temperature is always what kills it. And it's not just because I live in Arizona that I'm saying it. I've done tons of experiments. And when I was selling, I actually did used to sell to Hawaii. One of my favorite stories, I was selling, I think it was a bag of 20 Neos to Hawaii. It took 2 weeks and it wound up back at my doorstep. Like, it went all the way there. It sat for like a day. Their customs rejected it. It sat there for another like 3 days because they lost it. They shipped it back, and none of like it was just snail mail. I think it was like this was probably in like November or whatever, and so the temperatures were all fine all along it or whatever. But it was like kind of gearing up towards Christmas shopping, so everybody was slow for shipping. And I got it 2 weeks later, and everything was still perfectly alive. And it was like, oh, so you shrimp can live in the bag for 2 weeks. You just decide not to if it gets too hot. Like it really is the temperature that winds up doing them in.
Yeah, and I know that for a fact too, because I had a friend of mine send me a package of fish. They got here the day that I took off for vacation for a couple of weeks. I was lucky enough though that I had a friend pick them up, off the doorstep as soon as they got there, and he kept them at his at his shop. And it's here in Arizona. It's just a shop, but the fact that they weren't necessarily in direct sunlight, he had a swamp cooler, or whatever.
Yep.
They were able to last the
That's
two
all you
the
need.
two
That's what I'm
weeks
saying.
the 2 weeks that I was gone. I came back. I was a little bit concerned that I was gonna, find some dead stuff. Everything made it, and it was just that they just didn't get hot. The
Yep.
fish will last a lot longer in the bags, um, than we can think of. That we believe that they can. I agree with you. It's the temperature that's going to get you.
Yep.
If you go to either extreme, that's where you're gonna get into trouble.
Yep. Absolutely.
Now, I know you had brought up some of the images for your fish room. Why don't you talk
Yeah.
a little bit about one of the things that I'm very curious is that, and I've seen in your videos, is the cascade system that you set up, where you have the top tank draining into the middle tank. What's the reasoning behind that?
Yeah. Sure. I'll go get us to just a picture to look at here. I'll drive through here and then I'll get to that. I promise. So this is an old 75 gallon I had. This is the first tank. This my dad had. This is his fish tank when I was a kid. I was like 5, and I had like mollies in there, and they bred, and that's kind of what started everything. And this is my new house. So we got. I mean, that's not officially a U-Haul because I don't think you're supposed to do that. But we got tons of cinder blocks in the backyard. We bought every fish tank, every 20-gallon long fish tank that every Petco in within a 2-hour driving radius of us. Like we went every weekend for like I don't know. We probably went like 10 weekends in a row, and we cleared them out every single week. There's no way to get Petco to get you like 150 tanks delivered. You can't even get them all in one distribution area. I would have gone to one distribution, picked them up back and forth, and nope. So those are all one at a time. We drilled them all. So I got a big drill press under that Ramada. I have a whole bunch of videos coming out how to drill them. We drilled them really successfully. I think we had a 2% failure rate, and we didn't use any of the fancy, expensive, glass hole saws. We used the cheap ones on Amazon. And this is with a Magitarium glass, so it's really thin glass. You see, we painted them all out here. You can see how bad the weeds got because I was doing fish tanks and not the weeds. So we wound up getting rid of the weeds, but the glass tanks did good. We learned how to paint them. I have a video on how to paint all that stuff, and then we started setting up the room. So the first thing we set up the drain lines. Then I built out the bottom here. You can see the air line and the water line getting set up. And then we just started racking them and stacking them. So this is kind of that whole build out part I was talking about, how to plumb them all in, plumb them all together. And then this is that room empty. It's dry. There's no water in at this point, but kind of finished. And then that's my favorite picture of me in the room. But here, let's go back to this picture. You can kind of see like what you were talking about, where that top row of tanks is literally, you can see it because the bulkhead's flipped. So on the top row, it's on the front. So it's coming out of the top tank, going to the middle, and then the middle rack goes to the bottom, and the bottom goes to that drain line you can see in these pictures here, that black drain line around the whole room. And was your question why I did that?
Yeah, because it just seems to me that a lot of people try to isolate tanks.
Got you.
And in this case, especially when you're dealing with a lot of tanks, it seems like you're not too concerned about keeping tanks isolated. I mean, they kind of are because it's only 3 tanks that are kind of linked in together. But I'm also kind of curious why you would do that. I mean, is it just because you're only bringing water into the top tank and then letting it work its way down?
Yeah, no. Let me see if I have a picture of the filtration. So this is the other room, by the way. This is the living room. Same idea here. Let's use this picture here. So you can see that the drain line in this room flows to the left down to that big 75 gallon on the end there. And so that's a sump. So actually in this picture here, all these tanks are using the same water. Every single tank in here is touching. The water does go from the top to the middle, the bottom, then to the drain line. But the drain line, it all mixes in the sump and then gets redistributed back to the top. So it's fully recirculating. All the water touches, and that's on purpose. That is by design that way. Do you want me to get into the purpose?
Yeah, well, you're
Sure.
just using one filter site, and then everything is getting filtered out of the sump, right?
Well, not technically. I mean, I do have individual sponge filters in every single one. I don't know that the picture does it justice.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, in here you can kind of see every tank has its own sponge filter, and air lines go into every single tank, and each one has its own pre-filter. So no, it's not really the filtration benefit. although it is an added benefit, I do have pretty cool trickle tower filters and fluidized beds and central filtration, and allows me to do a UV sterilizer, and it is nice for some filtration. But no, the big purpose was to stop crashing fish tanks. And so for me, when I breed, especially guppies, when I breed at high volume, my tank density is ridiculous. I keep a ton of fish in a tank. Um,
Oh, okay.
and so what I ran into when I was breeding is, especially in 10-gallon tanks, when you have 100 full-size guppies in a 10-gallon tank, there is very little margin for success. You're riding a razor's edge, and all it takes is missing a water change by like a few days, or maybe something dies and you didn't catch it, or it's usually just overfeeding that winds up doing you in. But it was easy to crash tanks. And so I got so sick and tired of crashing individual tanks when, maybe this tank is a breeding tank. There's 3 tanks, and the middle one is a breeding tank. It has 100 full-size black Moscow guppies. The one next to it, that tank's got like a single male because I'm doing line breeding, and he just needs somewhere to be, and that's the only tank I got for him. And the tank on the right, maybe it has a trio and some fry, but it's not really overstocked. And so when I have that not even distribution of livestock, it became a constant shell game of like, okay, maybe I can put a breeder box here so I can keep 2 of those males together so I can split these fish here. And I hated that. It was just such a pain. And I wound up losing those tanks with, and it's devastating. You lose a tank of 100, 200 feet, like, oh, dude, that's the worst. And so my whole system here is set up to not crash individual tanks. Now, if it crashes, you're losing the whole rack. So it's a much higher risk, but a much lower probability. And due to how I keep things, where my room density is not ridiculous, but I might have an individual tank that is just outlandish for like specific tank density, it caters itself to this kind of design. I don't think this design is right for everybody, by the way, but for me, for what I'm doing, I do think this is the right way to go.
Now, is so the object or the goal is to dilute the water? Is that what it is?
Yeah,
You know,
even it out.
yeah.
Yep.
Now, but if it's all draining into the same source, wouldn't it just concentrate it? Because
How do you mean?
yeah, because you're diluting it from supposedly from the heavy populated tanks into the least populated. But if you're doing that with the entire system, and the entire system is tied into one drain that goes into the sump, aren't you really just concentrating it even more, or is there constant water change?
You're mixing it.
Okay,
So like I want to kind of use an example here, because I'll use my hands to kind of talk here. In that example where I have like tank 1 has literally 1 fish in it, tank 2 has 100 fish in it,
yeah,
and tank 3 has like a few fish in it. In that example, my average is 1 plus 100 plus, let's say, 3. So I have 104 total fish across 3 tanks, but 1 tank is producing 98% of the waste.
yeah,
And what I found was I always crashed that one. So by connecting all of their water, so like literally all 3 tanks, instead of having 3 10-gallons, picture you have a 30-gallon tank.
yeah,
It just happens to be 3 separate boxes to keep things in. That's the whole methodology. So the sump is mixing everything. All of the gross water from that one bad tank gets evenly mixed with the good water from the other 2. But because my threshold across the whole thing is good, it's fine. So like, for example, maybe 30 fish per tank is totally fine for guppies. And in fact, 30 guppies in a 10-gallon tank, that's pretty reasonable. So when I'm able to put those all together, as long as my average is under, at 70 fish per 10-gallon, it starts looking like you might crash something. And so keeping 100 that's a problem, right? Hundreds, you're running really red hot. But if you're just keeping under 70 on average, right, across everything, then you could have a specific tank that could have 200, right? In this new system, in 20-gallon tanks, I can really cram them in 1 or 2 tanks, and then I gotta have a whole bunch that are just line breeding. And in those line breeding tanks, those are the ones I can do shrimp in, or snails, or whatever. And you can kind of double dip in that capacity.
okay. Yeah, I was real curious when I saw that. I was like, okay, it's either you constantly have fresh water coming in and dirty water going out, like the traditional automated systems, which at the end of the day, that's a lot of wasted water.
Yep. Yeah, those
And
are.
that's why I was kind of curious. Is like, how is he setting this up? But nah, that makes
No,
sense.
but to be fair, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like my system is incredibly water efficient. I go through a lot of water. I don't want to. There's no mistaking that. I water change. I mean, let's just say I water change. I don't know, 1,000 gallons of water a week, which is probably more than I do. I probably don't do 1,000 gallons of water a week. I probably do. I don't know, probably like 700. But for sake of argument, let's say 1,000 gallons of water a week. I also use RODI, so I waste 2 to 3 parts of water for every good part. So I'm burning 3,000 gallons of water a week here. And to be honest with you, it sounds ridiculous. Like when you start thinking about how much water that is, you're like, oh, that's all the gallons of all of the fish tanks every week going down the drain. And it's not water efficient. However, the ends justify the means. The actual cost of that water from the city, extremely cheap, right? And so I know Arizona's in a water shortage. It don't show up on my water bill. My water bill's cheap. In my home, I don't even have a lawn. Like we used like I think less than 10,000 gallons as a household before the fish tanks were in, and so now we use we went from 10,000 to 20,000 gallons. But my dad, who all he does is he has a garden outside, a big grassy a lawn outside, and some trees and some shrubs. He uses like 40,000 gallons, right? It's like, well, it's all like. Yes, I do. I'm not trying to say I don't burn a lot of water. However, in retrospect to how much water, you might use just keeping a, 20-foot by 30-foot patch of grass alive, it's really, I mean, I'm not trying to say it's negligible, but I promise you SRP ain't going to notice it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's see.
And it's cheap. I mean, it's $60 a month. I mean, to be honest with you, $60 a month, you saw the operating costs there. The water was like the cheapest thing on the list.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll go through here and show you that other room, see if there's any other cool photos here. So you can see in this kind of a crazy picture, and you can see how much of a disaster it was while we're setting it all up, because you run into that whole, this is kind of what I struggled in that last video I put out talking about procurement. Where do you even put everything? Where do you put 300 2x4s and where do you put 100 painted fish tank, right? Like it's just hard to buy everything and manage, the rate at which you're setting everything up. But you can see here, I actually have that trickle tower stuff set up in the middle of the picture. That's all those are like little dish scrubbies.
Pot scrubbers.
Yeah. And I have that little Ryobi fan blowing them off because I wound up getting them all wet on accident. So try to dry those off before using them as filter media. And this room is, I mean, the room turned into a mess, but I mean, that's construction for you. And we're just setting all this up. You can see on the bottom of the floor here, that's a big loop of what will be the water line. So that big PVC, the white PVC on the floor, the big loop is the water line being assembled there. This is me and my little brother setting it all up. So we kind of started, and you can see above us, the water lines are in and the air lines are in. And we have some lighting up there getting put in. And then this is the room kind of finally coming together. You can see the dirt pile just kind of moved to the other side of the room while we're setting it up. But, I mean, that's, you only have so many square foot, and you're, like, I'm consuming the wood as I'm building it. So literally, while we built, like, this middle section, you can see behind this rack, all those 2x4s now, they're slightly more organized, but only marginally. They're all stacked up in those stacks behind, so you couldn't even get in between these two racks. Yeah, and then this screen I thought was interesting. You asked about the sump. So you can see on the left, this is two pictures. I should have kind of put boxes around them because it looks kind of blurry. They all look like the same room. But the left here is one sump. So you can see my drain line coming in. You can see that's the output pump, the pump on the bottom left. That's the sump pump. So that's pumping out. That's actually going to the city drain. And then I have room for some media, a little fluidized bed media, and then a chamber on the right where the water will pump back out of. And then above there, I have a big rack with 3 of those 27-gallon totes. That's a trickle tower rack. And then the picture on the right, you can just see I've just duplicated it twice. So the one on the right is for that back rack of 10s, and the system on the left here is for that island rack. Is there anything else cool here? Oh, yes, there is something cool here to show you here still. Look on the right picture here, and look, you see those 2 electrical outlets on the wall, the 2 big yellow power. Yes. Yeah, I don't even know what those are called. If you look under there, look a little bit underneath there, you can see a blue line of PEX that's connecting the 2 tanks. Do you see that?
Yeah.
So that PEX comes together, and then actually you can see it tees off and goes to the wall. They got to get way deep in there. I wonder if I can even zoom in. I probably can't zoom in there, but it actually goes through the wall. And it's important to note that it actually goes to the backyard. And what's happening there is it's a mechanical overflow. So if something happens and I accidentally pump too much water in there, and for some reason the power's out, so the sump pump doesn't work, it'll mechanically overflow outside and not inside. So I think that's helpful. And I'll cover that more when I get to the build out of that section. But to those of you out there, think about those redundancies when you're building the room. I think it's super important.
Yeah, and what are you doing to combat the humidity in the room? Because it seems like
Ooh.
you're running open tops, right?
Yeah, I am for now. I'll probably wind up putting some lids on them,
Okay.
not just due to humidity, but also I don't want to wind up having some fish jump. Guppies aren't big jumpers, but when you're line breeding, all it takes is one male to go to a tank it shouldn't be in, and you lost years of work. So I am thinking about lids. Let me see if I have a picture. So this is the RO system I put in. Mid putting it in, but I guess I don't have a picture of it. That's unfortunate. Well, that'll have to wait for another video. Crazy segue there. No, so to manage humidity, I'm using what's called an enthalpy recovery ventilator. And I'm definitely not an HVAC guy. So I actually have a whole video coming up where my buddy Brandon, who is an HVAC guy, has known me since I was a kid, but a friend of mine who's an HVAC guy helped me design the whole system to manage temperature and humidity, both latent heat and actually, generated. And so it's a pretty cool system. The ventilation equipment, effectively what it's doing is it's taking air from inside that's, humid, stinky, but cold, right? You've already paid to air condition it. And outside air, which is fresh, no VOCs. It's just fresh air outside, very low humidity. Whoa, that's the AI thing again. It'll get you. Yeah, that's crazy. Watch out for that, folks. For everything else, there's MasterCard. That's unfortunate. All right. Let me turn that off. That is crazy. I forget. It's always looking at my hands of like what I talk with my hands, so this happens like every time. Is that too zoomed in? Let's
You're
give
good.
people
You're
some
good.
breathing room here. All right, everybody. There you go. So all I was saying is it's taking outside air and inside air, and it blows them across each other. The air actually doesn't touch each other. There's my understanding is it's a paper type or maybe a plastic paper membrane that it crosses, and so you effectively transfer the heat in the correct direction, so the air that's coming in is not as hot as outside, and you get some of the humidity benefit too. So you get dry air from outside, but it gets cooled off by the cool air inside. For those of you that know thermodynamics, I understand I kind of said it backwards there, but in layman's terms, that's kind of what's going on. And I'll do a video about it later. But yeah, if you look it up, it's called an ERV, enthalpy recovery ventilator. And especially if you live in a dry climate, it's a really good way to deal with humidity. My humidity stays at 50 to 60%, which is pretty much right where I want it. I might get a dehumidifier at some point. It depends. We haven't had too bad of a monsoon this year, but I could see because it rained a few days in a row for us up here in Phoenix. Yeah. When it did that, I definitely noticed on the day 3, because you're blowing that now humid air from outside into your humid air inside, I think my humidity got up to 70% for a couple days. That's higher than I'd like it. And that's in the neighborhood of problematic, especially if you get water on the floor. 70% humidity, it's kind of hard to get water off the floor. So I might get a dehumidifier that I only run if we have monsoons outside. Yeah. But yeah, it's still, that's pending.
Now, are you running mini splits in those rooms?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That'll pull a lot of the humidity out too.
Yep. I have upgraded booster pumps on them too to help deal with the amount of humidity. Yep.
Well, is there anything else you wanted to share with us that we haven't touched on? I know we were kind of talking about killing markets and all that stuff. I don't know if you're serious about trying to get into that, but or maybe we could leave it for a different day. But I don't know how you're doing on time. That's the thing, though. That's my.
I'm all good on time.
Okay.
I'm all good. But yeah, I'm curious. Can I get your perspective on the maybe the plant side of the world is a better place to start off, because we were kind of talking off air about the killing the market, and I do want to pick your brain on that. So.
See, the thing with me is, like I told you, my only competition out here is really a PetSmart.
Sure.
So no Yeah, so no competition. Um, the way I've kind of done my pricing is I've kind of compared it to what's online pricing. I definitely can't compete with local fish stores because which I think for them the plants, like I was telling you, I think for them plants is the way to get traffic in the door. And one of the things that I was telling you is the hardest thing is getting people to walk in. Once they're in there, they're more than likely going to leave with more than what they intended to take. That's always seems to be the case. I don't, well, on my personal experience, I've never had it where somebody goes, I only came to get a pair of fish and that's it. It's always they came for the fish, they left with some more fish and some plants and some food and some, whatever.
Yep.
It's always more, but the hardest thing is getting them to come into your business. Um, so I've based my plant pricing off of online pricing, and 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 I've kept it at the same prices you're gonna find. Actually, I've kind of even gone on the upper end of the online pricing because my thinking is, well, you're not gonna pay for shipping, so you're gonna if you buy online, which is really the only choice you have down here, well, you're gonna pay the whatever pricing's on there, and on top of that, you still got to add shipping to it. So if you buy from me, yeah, you're paying the same price, or maybe you can get it cheaper online, but you're saving yourself the trouble of having to pay for shipping. And that was my thinking behind how I priced my sales, whether it's fish or whether it's plants. That's kind of what I'm using it, and I am using online pricing to keep my pricing at margin. I also, um, like I was telling you, Aquafunk has been a friend of mine, and he's worked retail, and he works with one of the fish farms, and he kind of gave me a guidance. He goes, you can do 2 to 3 times whatever the cost is. That's kind of on average the way a lot of retailers do it. And that's kind of what I've taken a little bit of that and a little bit of what I see online and kind of found the middle ground. And that's how I've been able to do it. There is, I don't know if Abe is still here. His Sonora Shrimp Aquatics, and he was the one that he's focusing on selling shrimp. He was thinking about bringing in some fish. I said that's great. I think because we don't have a lot of business down here, I reached out to him and said, look, we can work together instead of working against each other. Um, I'll stay out of selling shrimp because that's basically what his business is. I said, you can handle all the shrimp. I'll do all the referrals over to you. And if it comes to the fish side of it, we can, if we kind of talk a little bit about who's getting what, we can kind of, instead of competing against each other, we can offer more. So for example, maybe he wants to bring in rummy nose tetras. Well, instead of me also trying to bring in rummy nose tetras, I'll bring in cardinal tetras, and that way it gives people a little bit a broader market, and for them to have access. But him and I are the only ones that I know of that are actually buying um, for retail. So there's some people that sell here that they locally, from what they're breeding, or that kind of stuff. But it's not a big market, and like, well, you quickly find out. You say, oh yeah, I'm gonna breed to sell. Problem is, you never can breed fast enough to keep up with the demand of the sales. So there's always, for those people, there's always a low in the business because you got to wait for your stock inventory to climb up, unless you start buying wholesale to fulfill some of that void.
Well, can I jump in on that?
Yeah,
I agree with everything you said up until that point, and that's not like a. I'm not trying to be negative to disagree. I just think it's an interesting talking point. I think it's bad business. I think it's hobbyists doing business instead of thinking like a business.
yeah,
Put yourself in those shoes, right? Let's say I'm breeding, I don't know, maybe I can breed 10,000 shrimp every a couple of months or whatever.
yeah,
And I use couple of months. It's hard. Maybe you're doing 5,000 shrimp a month. That's probably a better metric. 5,000 shrimp a month. If you're selling them and you're selling out, like you're literally, you're doing the lull like you talked about. You're running out of shrimp. That tells me your prices are too low. That's supply and demand. And so instead of selling out and then sitting there twiddling your thumbs and looking at imports going, oh, look at that juicy pie. Like, instead of doing that, if you manage your breeding to just say every month I make 5,000 and then up your prices accordingly, you will make way more money, spend less time doing it, become scalable, and then you can move on. Maybe then it's time to expand. Maybe you can find somebody that's local to you that has a little farm, a shed, or a garage that you could do, another couple hundred tanks in. That's my goal, right? Because
Yeah.
we're all that way. We all breed to sell. You wind up outselling because truth is, although fish breed too many, it's really easy to sell. I mean, there's a lot of demand. It's just a big market out there. And when you're looking at a national market that'll soak up such a quantity, it's ridiculous to me to think that that you could ever flood a market. That's not possible. You can't, no one person can breed enough to flood a market unless it's a real local area, right? Like, okay, if
Yeah.
it's Yuma and you're breeding angelfish, like, sure, you could in Yuma, but
I
not
did that.
nationally, right? Yeah, yeah,
No, no, and that's the thing though. I think like for my business model, it's just local. I'm not
yeah,
doing any shipping. I'm not doing any of that. I know Abe. I think he was kind of looking into possibly shipping, which that opens up his market a lot more.
yeah.
But for me, I'm not interested. I don't want to deal with the shipping side of it if I can avoid it. I think if I was really focused on growing a business, that's unavoidable. You got to ship. That's the only way you're going to grow. But for me, it's it's how can I look at it? It's more of a part time kind of sales. It's not something I'm not looking for it to replace my job.
Totally.
So
Yeah, I get
so
that.
that's why I don't commit to that. Well, maybe when I retire and probably 10 years from now, that attitude might change where it's kind of like,
Sure.
okay, I want this to be the sole source of my income. Then obviously the business model is going to have to change and adapt to that. But as of right now, it's kind of right now I have the luxury of telling people, okay, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I'm available from x hours, and it's appointment only. That's the only way they can come to my house. It's because it's out of my house. I'm selling
Yep.
out of my house. I wouldn't want people just kind of cruising by and going, oh, let me check it out. But I'm okay with that. That's because I'm at that point. It's not whatever I sell on that weekend is a bonus. It's
Yep.
cool. It's not.
I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, but it is. I mean, it's funny you mentioned the angelfish and flooding out a market. I did that when I was trying to breed and sell. I quickly ran into that. I mean, the first couple of batches, they went like gangbusters. But after a while, like I told you, we're only maybe about 120,000. Maybe of that, what 0.5% of them are in the hobby. So it doesn't take very long to flood a market down here if you're only doing local. And if you're not doing the thing is what I was talking about, most people that are selling excess fishes, they're live bears, that's what you're gonna find at PetSmart. So,
Mhm.
obviously it's not that necessarily that they were set out to breed, but live bears are gonna do what live bears do. And so those fish, yeah, there might be some people that might be interested in them. A lot of the times you see them giving them away. That's why I avoided trying to bring in the stuff that I bring in. Is the stuff you're normally not going to find at PetSmart, but it's still pretty common community stuff. It's not the rare stuff. I don't want. I've seen too many people make the mistake where they say, "Oh, all I'm bringing is all the exotics, and that's all I'm going to sell," and you end up finding out that it's really hard to move some of the exotic stuff because not everybody's into it. There's a
Yep.
reason why guppies, platies, mollies are so prevalent in fish stores because most people that's what they buy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think the national shipping has changed the whole narrative in this hobby. And what's funny is I don't hear the narrative actually being said online. Like, when I grew up, like, just to say it frankly, I grew up watching Aquarium Co-op. That was 2015, 2018. Like, I was peak Aquarium Co-op kind of growing there. And that's back when he was doing all the, how to build a fish room
Yeah.
series for himself. And he did, the whole, like, how to make money, how to breed for profit, I think what the series was
Yeah.
called. And I'm sure, have you watched that series?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
did.
yeah. We all, yeah. And in that series, it's great information. It's missing a lot of relevancy to current. there's a lot that still totally apply. It's worth watching, but the idea that you can flood a market in today's world, if you're a business, like you said, if you're just doing it to make some money on the side, it's not what I'm talking about. I mean, as a
Yeah.
business,
Yeah, you're talking about being a
it,
full blown online business.
it's fundamentally changed. It's just different now. Um, the idea that you have to go through a wholesaler, because that's kind of what he talked about, right? Like if you make too many fish, go through your local fish store to go talk to the wholesaler. To me, that's crazy. One, I'd never go through a local fish store. I'm a big boy. I can go talk to a wholesaler myself. And two, I ain't talking to a wholesaler because I'll go sell it myself. Retail, online, which is, I'm not down talking to Corey back then. Back then, he's totally right. But times have changed, and I don't hear the difference echoed in anybody online. You go look at how many guppies sell on Amazon. Go look at how many shrimp sell on Amazon. It's ridiculous, and it's not being sold through wholesalers because the margin's no longer there.
Yeah.
It's imported and being direct to consumer.
Yep. Well, sir, anything else you want to talk about? We've almost hit the 2 hour threshold.
Oh, 2 hours. That's crazy.
I flew by.
I have something to, I guess I have a last comment of just something that I think it's cool to think about. And I'm probably going to do some experiments on it. Have you heard of a breather bag?
Yes.
So, as a last point of controversy, I want to throw out there to those watching, I think it's worth us thinking through breather bags a little bit deeper. I'm actually really anti-breather bag, which is interesting as a shrimp seller because shrimp are probably they're probably the number one thing that it actually helps. Like the shrimp are probably the most prone to be sensitive to the sloshing of water, which is pretty much its big added benefit. I have done some research and thinking and math. I really think breather bags are actually a big detriment. And the reason why is interesting, just to give somebody something to think about. You said you had fish in a bag for 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Were they breather bags or were they regular bags?
I think Jeff used regular bags.
Sure.
Regular
and
bags.
so, from my testing, both can make it to about that 2 week mark. Allegedly, through testing, it's possible to get to 28 days in a normal bag. And I think that the testing was worth doing, although sacrificing some livestock to get the information of what I learned. The problem with breather bags is that they are diffusing not only oxygen, but CO2. They have to. That's what you're displacing the oxygen with. And the interesting part about diffusing CO2 and oxygen is that your equilibrium is now the outside. You no longer have a sealed environment. They offer that as a benefit. When you look at the benefits of using a breather bag, the benefit is that the fish will never run out of oxygen.
Yeah.
And the irony is, if you do the math about the actual dissolved oxygen concentration, if you use just pure oxygen, 2/3, pure oxygen, and then 1/3 water, and you ship it, what you'll learn is the fish will die of starvation about a month before it'll run out of oxygen in that sealed bag. So the problem was never running out of oxygen. It's a fake. You solved a non-existent problem, but you now created a new one. You solved a problem that didn't exist, but you created a brand new one. The new problem is that by creating a bag that is intended to change out CO2 and oxygen, you now have no way to lower pH, which is actually something that's a huge benefit. Because in a sealed bag, when you have pure oxygen and then just tank water, what happens as the fish breathe? Oh no, I did the AI thing again. As the fish breathe, what's happening is the CO2 is building up and it's dropping the pH in the bag itself, which makes ammonia non-toxic. And what I found in my testing, and this is just me, this is my test, this is with guppies, it may be different for other folks, but my testing, the ammonia actually killed the fish that are in a breather bag far before starvation killed the ones that are in a normal bag. And so for those of you out there, think about it and try to prove me wrong. I'd love to see an experiment or somebody that can provide me some math that says otherwise. I know that that's a really nerdy thing to say, but I've done a bunch of thinking on it, and I think breather bags are a total industry plant.
Yeah, well, there's a couple comments here. One of them's from Aquafunk. He says he's never had luck with breeder bags. They are too thin and cichlids rip them into shreds. And then Mike brings up another good point is that if you go with, depending on who you go with, some shipping companies will require you to double bag, and you can't do that with breeder bags. So
totally correct. Yep.
Those are a couple of things that were out there. With that being said, Adam, I just want to thank you so much for accepting the invitation. It's so exciting. I wanted to say congratulations on 1,000.
Oh,
That
dude,
was
thank you.
that is so cool. How quickly did you get there? It wasn't that long, was it?
I haven't actually. I think it's 2 months. I think it's been 2 months.
Wow, that is incredible. That is
Yeah,
incredible. That's it. Really, like I said, I think Funk was right on it when he said he goes, this guy's gonna be is gonna blow up or it's gonna be a bad crash. But I think you're on the right path. I think people are really gravitating. Your personality is really good. You're putting out information, even though it's such a niche industry. Your perspective on what you're bringing out is a different look that a lot of people haven't seen, which I think that's part of what the big appeal is. And like Funk said, I just wanted to wish you the best of luck.
thank you.
Being that we're both in Arizona, I definitely pulling for you, and hopefully in the near future, I'll be able to go check out in person your setup.
Dude, absolutely. It's an open invite, and I make a mean rack of ribs. So let me know ahead of time. It'd be fun to have a
Oh
barbecue
shoot!
and come check it out.
Forget the fish room. I'll go for the ribs.
Right? Oh, dude, yeah. Trust me. No, it's good eating around these parts, dude. It's good.
Well, with that being said, I want to thank everybody that was here with us today. Thank you so much. We topped the 2 hour mark. Uh, and just if you haven't for some reason haven't subscribed to Old School Aquatics, make sure you go check it out. Uh, I guarantee you're going to enjoy what he's doing out there. Make sure you give him a subscription, and let's watch him grow. I mean, I'm pretty excited to see what the future holds for you. I'm like I said, I'm pretty. I'm definitely. We're definitely pulling for you. Says Funk says I'm pulling for you. So
Thank you, Funk, and thank you both. I appreciate you guys watching, and I agree. I expect to blow up. I'm working really hard to make sure it's the right one, though.
all right. Well, thank you guys, and we'll see you on the next one. You guys have a great rest of your week.
Thank you all. Have a good one.